Racist cop assaults black man in court, then realizes she just attacked her superior. The courtroom was a furnace of stifled whispers and creaking benches, the air thick with the weight of 100 eyes. Marcus Tate stood at the defendant's table, his navy suit crisp but his hands trembling faintly at his sides. A black man in his mid-40s, Marcus had spent decades navigating spaces where his presence alone seemed to spark suspicion. Today was no different, or so he thought. He was here on a minor traffic violation, a ticket he'd contested out of principle. But the real trial, he sensed, was about something far deeper. Across the room, Officer Karen Wells gripped the edge of the witness stand, her knuckles white. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her police uniform starched to perfection, but her eyes burned with a fury that seemed personal. Marcus had seen that look before on street corners, in patrol cars, in the sidelong glances of strangers. It was the look of someone who saw his skin before they saw him. Wells had been called to testify about the stop, but her account was a tangle of contradictions. Marcus had reached for something, she claimed, her voice sharp, though bodycam footage showed no such thing. The judge, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, leaned forward, her gavel poised like a warning. The tension had been simmering all morning, but it boiled over when Marcus's lawyer, a young Latina named Elena Cruz, pressed Wells on the stand. "Officer, can you explain why you described my client as aggressive when the footage shows him complying?" Elena's voice was calm but razor-edged. Wells's face reddened, her jaw clenching. "You weren't there," she snapped. "You don't know how these people act when they think they're above the law." The courtroom gasped. Marcus's chest tightened, but he kept his gaze steady, refusing to give Wells the satisfaction of seeing him flinch. The judge banged her gavel, demanding order, but Wells wasn't done. She stepped down from the stand, her boots thudding against the hardwood floor, and pointed at Marcus. "You think you can play the victim here? I know your type." Her voice was venom, loud enough to echo off the walls. What happened next was a blur. Wells lunged toward Marcus, her hand raised as if to strike or grab him. The crowd erupted, some shouted. Others stood, phones raised to capture the chaos. Marcus braced himself, his heart pounding, but he didn't move. He wouldn't give her the excuse she wanted. Elena rushed to his side, yelling for security, while the judge's gavel slammed repeatedly, her voice drowned out by the uproar. But then, a voice cut through the noisy deep, commanding baritone from the back of the room. "Officer Wells, stand down." The words were like a whip crack, freezing everyone in place. A man stepped forward, his presence filling the space. He was black, older, with a salt and pepper beard and a suit that spoke of authority. His eyes locked on Wells, and her face drained of color. She staggered back, her hand dropping to her side. Who are you?" she stammered, her bravado crumbling. The man's expression was stone. "I'm Captain James Hargrove, your commanding officer, and you just assaulted my deputy chief of community outreach." The courtroom fell silent, the air sucked out of the room. Marcus straightened, his own shock mirroring the crowd's. He hadn't advertised his role, he never did. He'd risen through the ranks quietly, working to bridge the gap between police and the communities they too often failed. Wells, it seemed, hadn't bothered to check who she was targeting. Her eyes darted between Marcus and Hargrove, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Hargrove's voice softened, but it carried a weight that made Wells shrink. "You've disgraced your badge, officer. Report to my office immediately." She turned, her steps unsteady, and fled the courtroom, the door slamming behind her. The judge called for a recess, but Marcus barely heard her. His knees felt weak, the adrenaline draining away. Elena touched his arm, her eyes wide. "You okay?" she whispered. He nodded, but his mind was elsewhere in the years of slurs, the traffic stops, the assumptions that had followed him like a shadow. Today, for once, the truth had caught up faster than the hate. As the crowd dispersed, a woman approached Marcus, her face weathered but kind. She introduced herself as Mrs. Clara, a retired teacher who'd been in the gallery. "I saw it all," she said, her voice trembling. "I've seen too many like her, but you stood tall. My son didn't get the chance to." Her eyes glistened, and she pressed a small, folded note into his hand before walking away. Later, Marcus would read it. A thank you, scrawled in shaky handwriting, for giving her hope. The case was dismissed, the ticket thrown out. Wells faced suspension, and Hargrove promised a full investigation. But Marcus knew the real work was far from over. That night, he sat in his office, the note from Mrs. Clara on his desk. He thought of her son, of the countless others whose stories ended differently. He thought of Wells, not with anger, but with a weary resolve. Hate was taught, but so was justice. The next day, Marcus spoke at a community forum, his voice steady but raw. He shared his story, not to shame Wells, but to spark a conversation. "We can't change what we don't face," he said, "and we can't heal what we don't talk about." The room was packed, black, white, young, old, all grappling with the same questions. Mrs. Clara was there, nodding from the front row, her presence a quiet anchor. The ending wasn't neat. Wells's fate remained uncertain, and the system Marcus served was still flawed. But in that courtroom, in that moment, a crack had formed in the wall of division. Marcus vowed to keep chipping away, one truth at a time, knowing that justice wasn't a destination but a fight worth having. What do you think? Can one person's stand shift a community's view of justice? Or is the divide too deep?